There is a bird in your yard right now, or there will be, sometime this week, that is going to pick up a live ant and rub it into its own feathers. Not eat it, not carry it anywhere. Press it, deliberately, against its wing and hold it there while the ant bites. Then it will pick up another one. This behavior has a name. Researchers have been studying it for 100 years and still don't fully agree on what it does to the bird. The leading theory involves chemical warfare. One competing theory involves something closer to intoxication. What both theories agree on is this: the bird knows exactly what it's doing. It has been doing it for millions of years, and it looks, to the human eye, completely insane. This is one of 4 things happening in backyards right now that most people will never correctly identify. Here is what they are, what they mean, and what you need to stop doing the next time you see one. Welcome to Pet Brain Signal. Subscribe before we go any further, because by the end of this, you will never look at a bird sitting still the same way again. The behavior I was watching has a name. It's called anteing, and researchers have been trying to fully explain it for nearly 100 years without complete success. There are 2 types. In active anteing, the bird picks up individual ants and rubs them through its feathers, exactly like my starling. In passive anteing, the bird simply spreads its wings, lowers itself onto an ant mound, and lets the ants swarm over it while the bird sits there in a state that can only be described as rapture, beak open, wings trembling, eyes half closed. The leading hypothesis is that ants, when threatened, spray formic acid, and birds are deliberately harvesting that acid and applying it to their skin and feathers. Formic acid kills parasites, feather mites, lice, the invisible tenants that make a bird's life miserable. The bird is essentially giving itself a pesticide bath using live insects as the delivery system. But here's what makes researchers uncomfortable. The birds look like they're in ecstasy. They don't look like they're grooming. They look like something else is happening. Some ornithologists have suggested the acid produces a mild, intoxicating effect on the skin. Others think the sensation of hundreds of biting ants, uncomfortable as it sounds, may stimulate blood flow and relieve itching in ways the bird can't achieve otherwise. We don't fully know. What we do know is this: if you see a bird pressing itself onto the ground near an ant mound, wings spread, twitching and trembling in the summer heat, it is not sick. It is not dying. It is doing something ancient and deliberate and extraordinary. And if you back away slowly and watch, you are witnessing a behavior that most people who keep feeders for 30 years never identify correctly. Stop. Watch. Wait. Here is the second behavior. You have seen this one. I guarantee it. A bird lands on a fence post or a flat rock on a hot afternoon. It spreads one wing low, tilts its body to the side, fans its tail, and holds that position for minutes at a time. The feathers are ruffled out, the beak sometimes open. It looks sick. It looks wrong. People bring their birds inside. People call wildlife rehabilitators. What they're actually watching is sunbathing, and it is, like anteing, far stranger than the name suggests. Birds don't sunbathe for warmth the way we think. Their body temperature runs between 104 and 109 degrees Fahrenheit. They are not cold. What they are doing is using ultraviolet radiation to convert a compound in their preen oil into vitamin D, which they then ingest the next time they preen. They are running a chemical process on the surface of their feathers that requires specific light conditions and a specific posture to maximize exposure. There is a second hypothesis that overlaps with anteing. Heat drives parasites toward the feather tips, where the bird can reach them. The bird is hurting its own lice with sunlight. Watch the sequence, because it matters. The bird will hold the spread posture for several minutes, then snap back to normal and begin preening immediately, systematically working from tail to head, ingesting whatever has been produced or driven to the surface. It is a 2-step process, and if you only see the first step, it looks like distress. If you watch long enough to see the second, you understand you're watching something precise and purposeful. The most important thing I want you to take from this: a bird behaving strangely is not always a bird in trouble. A bird behaving strangely is often a bird operating at a level of biological sophistication we barely understand. The third behavior is the one I need you to watch for most carefully, because it is the one that carries real information about the environment, about what's happening in your yard right now, about whether something is wrong that you cannot see. It is called the freeze response, and it looks like nothing. A bird lands, moves normally, and then goes completely still. Not the alert stillness of a bird that has heard something. Head up, body taut, weight forward on the toes. This is different. The head drops slightly. The feathers compress. The bird becomes, visually, less like a bird and more like part of the branch or fence it's sitting on. It can hold this for 30 seconds, a minute, longer. Then it either resumes normal behavior or flushes. What you are watching is a bird that has detected something it cannot yet identify. A hawk in the tree line. A cat moving at the edge of the yard. A shadow that crossed the wrong way. The freeze is not panic. It is a calculated decision. If I hold still and compress, I am harder to see. If the threat resolves, I have lost nothing. If it moves closer, I will have information before I have to spend the energy of flight. Here is what makes this worth watching. When one bird freezes, watch the others. Because within seconds, sometimes within 1 second, every bird in the area will freeze in response. Not from seeing what the first bird saw, from reading the first bird's posture. This is information transfer happening in real time across species lines. The nuthatch reads the chickadee. The cardinal reads the nuthatch. They are all tuned to the same broadcast. If every bird in your yard suddenly goes still, something just changed in the predator landscape around you. Look up before you look around. Here is the fourth behavior, and I want to spend time here because I have never seen it explained in backyard bird content. You have watched a bird at your feeder who has clearly spotted a seed it wants. The seed is right there. Nothing is in the way. And instead of eating the seed, the bird pecks at the side of the feeder, or scratches at the perch, or picks up a piece of food and puts it down without eating it. It looks distracted. It looks confused. It looks, frankly, a little stupid. It isn't. What you are watching is called displacement behavior. It happens when two competing motivations, approach and avoid, are roughly equal in strength. The bird wants the seed. The bird is also not entirely sure the area is safe, or there is a social tension with another bird nearby, or something in the environment is slightly off. These two drives are canceling each other out, and the nervous system, unable to execute either one, produces a third behavior that is related to neither. Humans do this constantly. You're in a stressful conversation, and you start straightening objects on the table. You're anxious waiting for news, and you clean something that doesn't need cleaning. The behavior is a pressure valve. What displacement behavior tells you about the bird in front of you is specific and useful. That bird is in a state of conflict. Something in the environment is preventing it from fully committing to what it's doing. Watch what it does next. If it eats within a few seconds, the threat resolved. If it flies without eating, something that concerned it is still present. If it keeps displacing, the competing drive is strong and may not resolve at all. Once you know what you're looking at, you will see this every single time you watch a feeder for more than 10 minutes. I want to end with this one, because it is the behavior that, more than any other, made me feel like the birds in my yard were trying to tell me something. 24 to 48 hours before a significant storm system, a genuine front, not afternoon clouds, birds behave differently. The change is not subtle once you know what to look for. They eat more. Specifically, they eat with an urgency that is visually distinct from normal feeding. The pauses between bites shorten. The displacement behaviors disappear. The social conflicts at the feeder that normally produce a constant shuffling of hierarchy, those stop. Birds that would normally displace each other feed side by side. The calculation has shifted. The benefit of calories outweighs the cost of conflict. They also fly lower. The insect populations they track drop in altitude as barometric pressure falls, and the birds drop with them. If you see normally canopy-dwelling species foraging into shrubs, or ground-feeding species that seem unusually active in the afternoon when they'd normally be resting, pay attention to the weather. And then, a few hours before the storm arrives, the yard goes quiet in a way that is different from ordinary quiet. Not the sudden freeze of a hawk overhead. A gradual, deliberate dispersal. The birds have done the math. The caloric gain available at your feeder no longer offsets the exposure risk of being in open space when the weather arrives. They leave for cover. The first time I understood why my yard went suddenly, completely empty on what looked like a perfectly ordinary afternoon, I checked the weather radar. There was a cell building 80 miles southwest, moving at 30 miles an hour. The birds knew before I did. What birds are responding to is barometric pressure, which they detect through a structure in the inner ear called the vitali organ, sensitive to changes of a fraction of a millibar. They are not psychic. They are running on hardware we don't have, reading instruments we cannot feel. Your yard is not just a place birds come to eat. It is a live display of atmospheric data, predator activity, social tension, and biological processes older than the trees your feeders hang from. The starling that started all of this is still in my yard. I have watched her ant at least a dozen times now. The trance-like quality of it never stops being strange. She looks, in those moments, like she is somewhere else entirely. Like she is doing something birds have been doing since before there were people to watch them. Which, of course, she is. The next time you see a bird doing something you don't understand, holding still too long, spreading its wings against the ground, twitching in the sun, eating without really eating, stop. Don't walk away. Don't assume distress. Assume you are about to see something. Because you probably are. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever watched a bird and had no idea what it was doing? Describe it. I want every one of those stories. Because I will tell you what you saw. And I promise you, what you saw was not nothing. Roots run deeper than we see. Survival is quieter than we think.